Welcome back to That 1 Inch Barrier, the monthly podcast where we sit down and look at the best and the absolute favourites in international cinema because we want to help you all overcome that 1 inch barrier that is subtitles. So open yourself to a whole new world of films. I'm Nick LaBarrow with Josh Barry, Kieran Griffiths. Boys, welcome back.
Yeah.
How are we?
Good.
About 5 kilos heavier than the last episode, given
Happy
that we're
Easter.
recording this at Easter.
Yes. Yeah.
Just a couple of chalky eggs. Thank you to nondescript conglomerate of chocolate. I think there's a conflict of interest here. I can't say too much more. But thank you all for listening and tuning in. We appreciate, obviously, the support in our last episode of Barking Dogs Never Bite. That was about our patron saint of the podcast, Bong Joon-ho's first movie. We thank you for watching it on YouTube and Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasting shows. We appreciate it. But today, this episode is Josh's pick. What have we got in store for today's episode?
Yes, I went with a newer film because we had been slightly stuck in the early 2000s. So we went with The Quiet Girl, Irish film that's just been nominated for the best
international feature at the Oscars this year, yeah.
So unbeknownst to me, it's actually another first feature film from a director.
We're getting good at those.
Yeah, that was a complete fluke. But a quick rundown of the film. It's set in 1981. Kate, played by first-time actress Catherine Clinch, is 9 years old and is from a fairly poor, rural, overcrowded Irish family. When the mother becomes pregnant again, they decide to ship her off to distant relatives for the summer. Here, for the first time, Kate finds a loving family.
Yes, it was a lovely little film,
yes.
I will say, right off the get-go. But this has been one that has, at least for me, has sort of been around the talks of, I've seen a lot of, especially Australian reviewers review it. It did get a cinematic release here in late 2022. And it was one of those films that I saw so many positive reviews. I was like, oh, I need to go see this. And just kind of, it just fell by the wayside. It probably did like 2 weeks in cinemas. Unfortunately, like some of these films get with their cinematic release. But had you guys heard of this, or were you aware of its notoriety even before its Oscar nomination? Or
Yeah, same as you. I'd seen a few. I'd actually think I saw it on a few best of 22 movie lists.
Right.
But I missed it
Yeah.
in cinema here totally, and then I just saw it pop up on SBS on demand, which I was quite shocked about how quickly it
came out.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't know anything about it until the Oscar nominations came out. And from, because I was sort of reading what people thought was going to win and what people kind of predicted would be a frontrunner in certain categories. And there was a lot of people who were really sort of pushing for this to win Best International Feature. I mean, it was up against some pretty stiff competition, and obviously All Quiet on the Western Front was the obvious choice. Anytime a film gets nominated for Best Foreign Film and Best Picture, it's pretty much a shoo-in at that point. But there's a lot of people who are saying, this deserves to be the Best International Feature winner, which is why I was so excited to check it out.
Well, let's jump into it. The movie opens in a stunning, it's 4:3, the aspect ratio.
Yes.
And it's just a stunning shot of just an Irish field. And I think as well, this is a part of Ireland I've never seen on film. And that's not to say I've watched lots of Irish films. And in fairness, the amount of films I've watched set in Ireland are probably like United Kingdom productions anyway. You know what I mean? They're all in the English language. They're all backed by a reasonably big studio. So this is the first time I've sort of seen this side of the countryside of Ireland, I guess. And it's just, in general, the cinematography in this movie is beautiful and stunning. For a first-time director.
Yes.
Dear Lord. So it's a beautiful film, but we get introduced to Kate, and she's lying in the field. And because I knew nothing going into this movie, just seeing a little girl lying down, just completely still in the field, and having people shout her name out, I went, oh my God, she's dead. Oh, that's exactly how I was like.
So that's why she's quiet.
But I was like, it's a drama film. It's like people are notoriously in love with it and have spoken about how emotional it is. I'm like, oh my God, she's going to die at the end of this movie. Thank God she doesn't, because she gets up and responds. But we find out that in her family, she is sort of the black sheep, I guess. She's quite quite a I don't want to say underloved, but I guess that's probably the right term.
She's very meek. She's very timid.
Yeah.
Whereas her siblings are very sort of boisterous and good at getting the attention and the affection of their parents.
Yes.
She just sort of, is very much on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Which is there's some awful scenes throughout, especially towards the beginning and then towards the end of the film, of the way her mother treats her, and especially her father, who is a very, I guess, stereotypical 1980s blue collar alcoholic sort of worker. But yeah, going back a little bit, she has, I think it was 3 other siblings, all sisters, and meek, timid. She also has an issue with bedwetting that she gets pretty much berated for by her mother and then by her family. So you feel immediately from the get-go absolutely awful for this young girl. And because she's adorable too. She's an absolutely beautiful looking little girl, and she is just so reserved into herself. You kind of go, why would anyone want to hurt you?
Yeah.
But you just unfortunately are brought up in a lower to middle, probably more lower class family that does not know how to show the right affection and love for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the opening 5-10 minutes does a really amazing job of putting you in that place.
Yes.
Putting you in that world. And, the family's obviously not wealthy.
Yeah.
Seems like quite a poor family. The house is in disarray.
Yeah.
As you say, lots of kids.
Lots of kids. We see her in school as well,
Yes.
and she takes at lunchtime. She doesn't go outside. She takes the other person's. I think it was soup, but it could have been milk. I don't know.
Yeah.
It takes their lunch while no one's looking.
Yeah.
Obviously forgotten about by her parents again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does a really good job of drawing you into that world, and it's not a difficult world to imagine. Like, I mean, even if you didn't grow up in a family like that or in a sort of socioeconomic status like that, it's not hard to put yourself in those shoes. It's not so detached from, normality.
It's not like an Oliver Twist style. They're all wearing rags and they're all like they've been chimney sweeping all day. It's just you get immediately from the vibe that just based on the house, also just based on how they sort of respond to their parents, and there's a bit more of a fear rather than a respect for their parents.
Yes.
When the father walks in for the first time, everyone goes silent.
Oh, you could the tension in the air. You could cut it with a knife. It's palpable. Like there's this real sort of foreboding presence.
Yeah.
Even though he's not a particularly big man or scary looking guy, it's like he's obviously not a nice character, and that sort of gets revealed as we go on in that first act of he is an alcoholic. He's spending the family's money on gambling. He's having an affair with some local woman.
That scene, the way they introduce the affair is so seamless too, because Kate's at school and she runs away. Actually, there's a little bit of the school as well. Do you remember the chatterboxes when you do the pick a color green and they do the little?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a good thing. I was like, I remember those back in school.
Yeah.
I was going to make us choose our next movie based on a chatterbox.
That's a good idea.
That's how we should do all decisions.
Go back to that.
Actually, you know what? Introduce that in Parliament too, in government. That's how we should make all political decisions.
No more left or right wing. It's just all
chatterbox. But she gets picked up from school by her dad, and then as they're driving along, they drive past a woman, which is just seemingly, they just drive past a woman, and the car slows down. She gets in, and the first thing she says is, "What's she doing here?" And it just slowly gets revealed that they are, that dad and that woman are sleeping together. And because Kate's just so timid and quiet, she just observes. She's such a keen observer.
Yes.
And she's perceived as quite intelligent, but doesn't have a formal education. So obviously later on we find out she can't read and she can't write and stuff, but she has an emotional intelligence, I guess, that is shown very well through the visuals because she doesn't talk a lot.
No, I think that it's done really well in that the camera rarely leaves her side.
Yes.
And I think when you were saying before, it's really easy to be in that situation. I think that's reflective of the director.
Yes.
Just keeping you're never away from her. It's always from her point of view.
I think visually it's sort of poetic in a way. It's very sort of dreamlike. It's very much like watching a memory.
Yeah, I like that.
It's so much from a child's perspective of almost looking back and reflecting on these things. Like there's like this, I don't know, like ethereal quality to it that it's almost sort of, heightened a bit above reality. So you could definitely have sort of imagine it as, the memories of a child looking back on that time in their life where everything's very, it's either very glowing or very grey. And I really liked that so much of the, I guess, themes of the film and the feeling of the film came across in the visuals.
There's a hypnotic feeling to that too, because I was always so entranced by the film. And I think part of it was the performance. I think the performance is fantastic. I was definitely engaged with the story, but now you've said that about the visuals, I was looking back and I was like, oh God, yeah, actually, like I genuinely visually couldn't look away from this movie because of how it sort of grabbed me in. So that's a testament. And again, first time filmmaker, or, obviously done short films, but first time feature filmmaker.
First time feature,
Incredible. Like to have that sense of grabbing the audience's attention like that is quite phenomenal. On top of the whole family shenanigans, I guess, for lack of a better word, the mother is pregnant as well. So the fifth child,
that comes to be known.
And that's also revealed alongside the school sending a letter to the home about Kate's behavior at school. And they decide that they're going for the summer to send Kate off to a distant cousin so she can. They send her to this distant cousin because they live on a farm, so they assume that she's going to get put to work and we're going to teach you how to be a good member of society, and because you're quiet and you don't do anything. The complete opposite really happens for this girl, and in the best way possible, because once she goes to the cousin, so it's Evelyn and Sean.
Who, I guess when we say cousins, are much older.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, cousins of the mum. As well. Are just so lovely to her. Like, even despite Sean's initial reactions to her, which is revealed later on in the film as to why he's a bit standoffish.
Yeah.
It's an immediate change. It's an immediate, you go into their house and, it's a well put together house. They live on a beautiful farm. They're cooking breakfast. We get the sort of juxtaposition of from having no lunches to take to school, or mum hasn't made lunches yet, to as soon as the dad drops Kate off and comes in, they're having a fully cooked lunch together. So you get immediate juxtapositions of what this life is going to be like for Kate.
They're like polar opposites. Like you could not get, two more distant, people in terms of personality.
Totally, yeah.
And that's obviously a source of conflict because you can tell that the dad, Kate's dad, really doesn't like, her mum's cousins. Like there's sort of this, real tension there.
Yeah.
Not really sure why. It's not really explained at the time.
No.
But there's obviously something there, whether it is just they have money and they don't.
That's what I sort of felt to begin with,
And I think, you can tell that they sort of, look down on him, not necessarily because he's poor, but because he's, a piece of shit.
I was about to say he's a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Like the way he just
he puts the cigarette out on the hand, on the lunch as well.
Yeah.
And a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Evelyn has flowers for her cousin, the mother, and he just throws them in the back of the car and drives away. So he's a dick. He's a complete dickhead. And if you hadn't have picked that up from the beginning of the film, that's your solidifying event. That puts that down. But then obviously he drives away.
Just going back on where Sean, he's not overly emotional to her.
No, he's very stoic.
But for me, I instantly, I still felt that he really wanted her there.
Yes,
but there was something in the background that
he was resisting himself. He wasn't pushing her away, but he was.
Yeah,
it was one of those things where, and once you know why and what has happened to them, it's one of those things where he's stopping himself from getting attached. But it's done so well. Yeah.
Did you get After Sun?
I got some After Sun vibes. I'm not going to lie to you. It took me a couple of scenes. It was actually the first scene when, just jumping forward a little bit, when Kate and Sean actually work together on the farm, and she feels very open and asking him lots of questions. I went, oh. I was like, okay, I think I see where this is going, and I don't think that's a detriment to the film. I think there's definitely a predictability with certain things that happen, but for the story it's telling, it makes sense. It's one of those things where you go, well, this is naturally where this story would go in regards to that. So, dad drives off. He says, "Try not to fall in the fire, to his daughter. It's just stupid, simple instructions. And they take her upstairs and give her a bath. and she is shocked that the water's hot. First of all, so she has bruises all over her shins. So it just doubles down on that neglect that she's had for. I can't remember how old she is. I'm assuming she's like 8,
9. I think she's 9.
Yeah.
9 years of her life of just unnecessary neglect given to this poor girl, and you feel so awful for her. But she gets offered. Sorry. The mum says to the cousin that you can keep Kate as long as you want.
As long as you want, yeah. Yep.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This movie is heartbreaking, as delightful as it does get in the next act. It is just brutal.
Yeah.
It is so sad. And there's a lovely score that's happening in the background, but those scenes where it's silence and you hear lines like your mum said, we can keep you as long as you want. It's a dagger. It's a dagger through the heart. So
I think, silence in this film is used
incredible.
so well. And for such different emotions as well.
I would actually say the score is probably used in a dreamlike sense.
Yeah.
When it's like this sweeping orchestral score, the first time you really hear it is when she's running to the letterbox, and it's a slow motion shot, and you can see she's like taking in all the trees and the blue sky, and she feels free. It's when that dreamlike orchestral score just sweeps in and takes you off your feet. So this dreamlike scenario, or the reflective aspect of it, is something that I think is quite interesting. I didn't think about that when watching it.
Yeah, it's like that core memory type thing. It's like, those moments that really stand out when you look back on your childhood. It's like, I remember, when I first ran to the letterbox and, felt really open and free for the first time. So I think it definitely, whether intentional or not, that's definitely the vibe I got out of it.
I wonder if watching it again through that lens, because I didn't really watch through that lens, would be different. So it'd be interesting. And this is definitely a movie I would want to watch again. So we're introduced then to a water pit. Evelyn takes Kate out to this water pit and says the water has sort of like magical powers, like you can drink it and it makes you feel better, it makes you healthy. But she's also very specific about going, don't come out here by yourself. Don't fall in. Don't jump in.
It's very deep.
It's deep and whatnot. And it's beautiful. Like the water is this before they get the drinking the ladle out. It's this still water with her reflection in it.
I love that shot.
That shot's great.
Out of the ladle.
That's another overexposed light that's coming behind them as well. It just really doubles down on that dreamlike feel. But it's immediate that there is significance to this water pit. It's not one of those things where it's just like, let's show you the farm. Oh, there's the water pit. No, there's definitely something significant to it. And then we get to the first night, and Kate's offered a drink before bed, and she says no because of the bedwetting. She doesn't specifically say it's because of the bedwetting, but she basically alludes to the fact that my mum doesn't let me drink before I go to bed because I do wet the bed. There's also an element where there is Kate sort of, not through anything she says, I think she does say something, but just more so now what Evelyn and Sean have seen, that Evelyn wants to go, I want to send money to my cousin, to my mother, and help the family out. And she asks, would your mum be okay with that? And Kate goes like, oh yeah, mum was, and was like, what about your dad? He's like, well, I think dad would get upset. And it's that pride thing again of he doesn't want help because, I'm a hard worker. I provide for my family. I'm a man. I'm an Irish man in the 1980s, and I fucking drink and I gamble, and that's what men do. And as long as my kids get at least bread and soup, they're fine. Like he's like, that's what I got growing up. That's what he's that sort of like when you talk about toxic masculinity, that's what toxic masculinity is being so ignorant to the fact that you are not a good parent.
And I think even though Sean initially, as we've said, is quite cold and distant, it's a very different kind of cold and distant.
Yes, absolutely.
There's still very much a sort of a reserved tenderness and a kindness.
Yes.
There's not this overt sort of just disdain for her as a child. It's obvious, as you said, that there's a reason. We don't know what yet, but there is a reason that he feels this way.
And the actor who plays him, instantly when you meet him, I was just instantly drawn by him.
Andrew Bennett.
Yeah.
Who doesn't, in fairness, doesn't have a photo on IMDb. So,
because he's
been in a couple of things.
Oh yeah, God's Creatures.
Oh, he's in God's Creatures.
I think that trio, the trio of Evelyn, Kate, and Sean.
Yes.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think they have great chemistry together. I think the dynamic between the three of them and how it evolves, because there is that same sort of reservedness towards Kate from Evelyn. Like there is that
Initially,
sort of hesitation, but she's much more sort of willing and open to embrace her. And then it becomes sort of like this very enthusiastic wanting to nurture her and take her in as her own.
Yeah.
Whereas Sean, you can sort of tell is like slow down a bit here. Like, we don't want to go through this again kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And it's interesting the way the director shoots Sean in those moments as well in regards to a lot of the shots, like you say, it's from Kate's point of view. We see Sean from the back. So, because the next morning we get the first good night and he's like, say good night. And Kate says good night. And he goes, see you in the morning. And he's just watching his game show on television and not really giving a second thought to it. But wakes up the next morning, Kate's wet the bed, and Evelyn's really just nonchalant about it, not thinking about it. Oh, it must be, the mattresses, sometimes get moisture or something. She says something that just makes Kate feel really not bad about it at all.
And Kate's fully expecting her to come in and start berating her as her mother did. Like she's very sort of afraid and upset about the fact that she's wet the bed again.
Yeah.
And then, Evelyn just comes in and goes, oh yeah, that's fine. That obviously wasn't your fault. Like, let's just change these sheets.
Something wrong with the mattress.
Yeah, move on with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's obvious here is that they only have boys' clothes to dress Kate in that first morning, and they make a small point of that. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we only have these clothes here. I know they're for boys, but they'll fit you well.
I think is the wallpaper in the rooms like trains or something?
And stuff.
Yeah.
That shot of that. Because you always, when you go to those things, that's when you take notice. Like, okay, that's there for a reason.
Yes.
So it's trains as she's going to bed.
Yeah, so it's obviously, a room that a young boy lived in at some point.
At some point, yeah.
It's not really given much of an explanation, so you just sort of assume, maybe, they had a son and he's since grown up and left home. Because they are quite an older couple.
Yeah,
That's right.
totally.
Yeah.
And then we go downstairs. They're making, Evelyn's making breakfast, and she suggests to Sean, do you want to take Kate out on the farm today? And he's like, no, it's not a good day for it. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I don't really want to do it. And he shows again that hesitancy. So Kate hangs out with Evelyn for the day, and we get this sort of montage of them going about doing chores, showing her how to wash up, all to this again sweeping orchestral score. And it's not a countdown, I guess a count up you would say, but she's doing 100 brushes of the hair, and the way that the brushes happen, and we get the 96, 97. It's almost like there's this release of like when they get to 100. Kate is now fully into this family. Like Kate feels completely safe. And that montage of it's such menial things like cleaning and sweeping and helping out around the house. But it's something Kate's never done before and never had to do and never felt safe doing before. And as soon I was on the edge of my seat for this build-up, I was like, this is where the film turns into a really delightful, beautiful story about freedom and acceptance of such a young soul. And then that 100 hits of the brush, and obviously, her hair's never been brushed like that before as well. So she gets these luscious locks, I guess you could say. I don't know another way to explain it. But that to me was the turning point in the film of it's gone from this incredibly sad story about a neglected girl to the story of her freedom and her ability to now express herself, because she changes as well in that. And this is when she stops wetting the bed. And she's asking lots of questions and having conversations with Evelyn and Sean and whatnot. So I think using that directorial style, also that how you would make the film is a really fun way of bringing the story into that a more nice light.
Yeah, I mean, I love that as well. Like the cause and effect. Obviously, those issues she was having were all caused by traumas that she grew up with, and as soon as she gets this slight bit of, well, I shouldn't say slight because they do really care for her, but it's a new relationship.
Well, it's just how you would expect someone to care for a child. They're not going above and beyond in any real way. It's just they're feeding her, washing her, cleaning her, clothing her,
But almost in that recollective sense to Kate, that's this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and the movie is reflective of that. I can't believe this is how they treat children. You're right. It's completely should be the standard. We then get a scene where Sean has a couple of friends over and they're playing a card game, poker or something, and they're all smoking. So there's a haze in the room, all drinking whiskey, and Kate's sitting there and watching. and they're having.
They're all like old Irish guys.
They're all old
like,
Irish guys. Yeah,
if
yeah.
you walked in, I feel like if in a rural pub in Ireland, if you walked in,
Yeah.
they're the guys you would see either at the bar or in the corner.
Totally.
Guys you want to hang out with.
Yeah, but exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And they're telling a story about how a neighbor is helping a sick friend out, a friend who has a sick father. Sorry, and a new friend walks in and goes, "Oh, who's that?" Points to Kate, and Sean says, "You don't need children of your own to give them shelter." And the room kind of goes a little quiet after that. And it's another instance of going, okay, there's something more here, because Evelyn's reaction to that is almost like, well, that's true. You don't need children, but this is not the first time we've had to be paternal. And there's not I wouldn't say it's a negative reaction from Evelyn, but it's something that something is stirred in her at that point. And you get the idea that there's either been maybe this son of theirs has left on bad terms, or obviously something a bit more disastrous has happened. So,
and that's the shift in him as well. I guess that's
him,
why
yeah.
that scene's really interesting, because Evelyn is a bit. I get taken aback by what he said.
Yes,
and maybe
totally,
takes
yeah.
it a bit the wrong way, but it's him sort of. For me, it was him coming out. I'm accepting this little girl now.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is a nice scene, actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And then we get to the next morning once more, and Sean allows Kate on the farm to come around, and she asks a question of why is that person helping the sick father, and why is the neighbor doing it? And he's like, well, that's just what people do. People help each other. We live in a town where we all want to help out and make sure everyone's okay. And I thought that was interesting. Again, it's one of those things where, well, yeah, of course, any other normal person would be like, helping people is good. But Kate comes from a background where that is not the case. But in her inquisitive, now more freedom-filled nature, she also wanders off. She wanders off on the farm, and the immediate panic from Sean is put to 100. It's the initial, okay, I'm going to look here, and then I'm going to start being like, Kate, where are you? Start shouting out her name.
And it's way more than what you would expect from, someone who's, Kate's just wandered off on the farm.
Yeah.
Yes.
His panic and the sort of the anger when he finds her
Yeah.
is very prevalent. So there's
Yes.
obviously, again, something underlying here.
Yeah.
There's a reason why.
Because he yells at her. He yells
Yeah.
like, you can't run off like that. And she gets scared. And
yeah.
then she runs back to the
And
house.
up until then, he's been so quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's kind of.
I think the film really uses, like the title is The Quiet Girl, so it's kind of obvious.
Yeah, but the whole
It uses silence and then loudness really, really effectively. So those moments where people do start yelling, where the music does swell up, they're used really well, and okay, this is a pretty significant moment because it's not often someone does raise their voice or say something that's a bit untoward.
Totally.
Yeah.
Kate runs to the house, and she's sitting at the table. Sean comes back, and they don't say anything to each other. There's a bit of a silence, there's an awkwardness between them, I guess. But Sean leaves her a biscuit treat on the table as an apology, I guess. And as Evelyn comes through, Kate sneaks it into her pocket, and I thought that was sweet. It was I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. This is our truce.
Yeah.
we're friends again because of the biscuit sweets.
And that's probably one of the nicest gestures that she's had in her whole life. That's the really sad part about it, is that, again, like it's just stuff that normal, common, decent people do for a child. But to her, it's these grand gestures of love. And I think that's really what the film sort of boils down to.
And then she reciprocates by then going back out to the farm and helping sweep in the cow
Dairy
pen,
sort of-
the dairy place. And
You can tell that we definitely, grew up really
we grew up in rural Ireland.
Yeah, the cow milking
Look at these
place.
hands. Look at all the hard work these hands have seen.
Bunch of soft middle-class white boys.
3 soft-class middle-class white boys with the podcast as well. So we're really hitting the demographics there. Then we get what I think is one of the best scenes in the film, and that is the Sean is like, oh, I think there's a letter in the letterbox. can you want to run and get it for me? I'm going to time you and stuff. And that's when we get the shot of Kate running to the letterbox, and it's slow motion. It's this fantastic tracking shot of her running, and the music and the way the director shoots the trees and shoots the sky, and it's elongated for sure. It's a long scene, but I think it needed to be. I think you really needed to feel that sense of freedom that Kate feels, and she sprints and she runs to the letterbox.
The way she expresses so many feelings.
Oh my God.
In that shot.
Yeah,
The elongated shot wouldn't have worked if it's just emotion after emotion and just out of
so heightened. Yeah. And it's brilliant. It's wonderful.
She's amazing.
She's absolutely incredible. And runs and gives the letter back. And then they're taking a trip to town now. They're going to a party, I believe. Or is it? No, it's the wake, isn't it? Sorry,
No, so he says we're gonna go shopping.
we're going shopping. That's right. There's two elements.
Yeah,
of
to
it.
get
That's
her
right.
some of her own clothes
Clothes
because up
and
until
stuff.
this point she has been, only wearing the boys' clothes in the
Yes.
house. So,
Yes.
they give her some money to go out and do some shopping.
Yes.
And I think Sean gives her
She's never done before.
No, it's such a foreign concept for her. And then Sean gives her, like a pretty significant amount of money and says, go and get yourself something like sweet to eat kind of thing. And it's obvious he's given her like way more than she needs. But again, it just comes back to that, he's obviously a very sentimental, very kind and caring person once he's able to come out of his shell.
Yes.
And I think that's so much of what the movie is about is people coming out of their shells, not just Kate, but Sean and Evelyn as well.
Yeah.
And sort of, embracing one another, because it is very much like they are, puzzles as people with missing pieces. And then they sort of realize that those missing pieces are each other. Just to, throw around some really bullshit wanky.
That's really good.
It was nice. I was drawn in on that. I was like, he's so right. I was like, oh my God, he's correct.
Just like turns into Citizen Kane, or just gonna like stand up and start slow clapping.
Oh,
But that's definitely what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
It's like you can
No, it
tell
does.
these people are just sort of like 90% of the way there. Maybe not Kate, but like Sean and Evelyn, there's just this piece missing from them.
Yeah.
And Kate is that missing piece. Whereas Kate is missing so much, and Sean and Evelyn start to fill that in, but she starts to fill in her own puzzle herself.
Yeah.
There is so much untapped potential in her, as a child and as a person. And we only see this very small bit of her, but as she comes out of her shell, like she's revealed to be this very intelligent and very, funny and very kind and just like warm and bubbly person that wasn't able to be that.
Oh Lord, God! The more I think about this movie, the more I love it. Then we find out the father of the neighbor, the sick father, has passed away, and then they're going to the wake or the memorial for that. And in another classic moment of them bonding, Sean gives her first sip of alcohol as well, which is, I think that's just a quintessential scene of of a father bonding with their
child.
I guess you could say.
Yeah, you're right.
And Kate's starting to get tired at the wedding, and a neighbor offers to take her for a walk, get her out of the room for a little bit and hang out with her. This just happens to be one of those neighbors that is incredibly nosy and noisy.
The town gossip.
The town gossip. That is the absolute best way to describe that. She is the town gossip. And she says, basically makes a comment about that Evelyn and Sean had a son. And that son one day drowned in that water pit. And it's it's one of those reveals that, yes, it's a shock, but you go,
you've been leading up to it.
right, that makes complete sense. And I don't know about you guys. I kind of had picked this, that they had a son had passed a couple of scenes earlier. It'd been a couple, but then the relevance of the water pit came to me, and I was like, right, okay, that's why Evelyn has she's like, this is, this has a magical feeling to this water pit. It's, this devastating reveal that, that they're really attached to Kate now because
It's a surrogate.
it's a surrogate. Yeah.
I'm going to go against the grain and say I really didn't like that scene.
Ooh.
Because I think
With the
yeah.
neighbor.
So
Yeah.
when she's walking away, she's walking back to the house from the wake with this neighbor, the sort of nosy, town gossip, as you said. And we should preface this by, she doesn't just go straight into the dead son thing. She's sort of asking, how does Evelyn bake? Like, what does she use? Like, what's her recipe? Like, does Sean still do this around the farm? Like, she's just trying to get as much gossip as she can.
She's nosy as hell.
But I just feel like the film had done such a good job up to this point of being quite subtle and being sort of very, very slow and nuanced, and you sort of picked up on cues. And then it just sort of straight up dumps exposition on you with going, yeah, and they had a son that died. And it's like, oh, okay. I feel like you could have revealed that in a better way.
Yeah.
Like, I like framing it around the fact that it is just this nosy woman overstepping her mark and saying things that she shouldn't.
Totally.
Like they definitely could have, if they'd walked past a cemetery and like seen a grave with the same last name, I think I would have turned the film up and like, oh god.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
I think once that scene had happened, I was a bit. I feel like they wouldn't have let her take her on the walk.
Yeah.
She's clearly the town gossip.
Yeah, it seems like you would not trust someone like that to take her home because it's very obvious that she is that sort of person. So I was just a bit disappointed because it felt like, I knew that was going to happen. Like I knew that they probably had a son and I knew something probably bad happened, but it just felt like such a disappointing way to reveal it.
Yeah.
Especially not having Evelyn and Sean there for the reveal when Kate finds out. It just sort of felt a bit like,
I would say then I think that scene with the reveal makes the next scene more impactful when Kate says it's because then they get in the car at the end of the wake and Kate says, she told me you had a son and I've been wearing his clothes this whole time, and the silence I think is so much more impactful than, well, for me anyway. I feel like when she reveals it and then Evelyn and Sean just realize they're like, okay, we can't keep this a secret anymore. Like this is
I did like that.
That scene is that heartbreaking. That scene, for me.
And that's probably one of the best acted scenes between the three of them. Even though they don't really say or do much, you can just tell. Like there is so much underlying sort of emotion there between the three of them.
Totally.
So I did like that scene. I think I like the film on the whole. That scene is probably just one of those ones where I was like,
could have been.
Yeah, I think just that. Especially because, as I said, it was so subtle in the way it sort of revealed plot points that having just like straight up overt exposition
over the head
just
sort
felt
of thing.
Really, really strange. It was sort of like they went, "Oh man, we're this was only meant to be a 90-minute film. We can't have a scene in there where we reveal stuff so that we need to just like
we need to pick up the pace."
Yeah,
I'd be interested to know because I actually didn't know until this morning that this is a adaptation of a book.
Yes.
I
didn't know that until now. I do my research.
A really short book, an 85-page book. So a long short story, they call it.
Called Foster. Foster by Claire Keegan.
I mean, that seems about right. 80-odd pages, 80-odd minutes. It's not like we're talking about a film we talked about on the last episode, Drive My Car, which was a 3-hour film based on a short story.
But I wonder, it'd be interesting to see in that book whether that is...
Yeah, I would. I would like to know. I'm going to have to go read that book.
Yeah, actually, no, I want to read it.
Well, Nick,
I wonder. Funny
that's
enough,
right. Yeah.
Well, if you listen to the Nick Slicks Fix channel, no cross promotion here. I wonder, just harping on again about this, if the scene in the car would have been as impactful without the scene beforehand, though, or do you think it's just that needed to be revealed in a better way?
I think you can still have that scene.
Yeah.
I think I just would have liked to have seen the reveal in a different way.
Keeping in line with the subtlety of everything else.
Yeah, maybe Kate picking up sort of puzzle pieces as she comes out of her shell. She starts to explore the farm more and starts picking up
it's a good idea because
and
they
then comes to them with something like...
Yeah,
like her
finds a photo or
inquisitiveness
something.
Yeah. Okay.
And goes, who's this? And then they go, oh, well, it's our son. And then she goes, oh, well, what happened to him? Because she's, a child and they just have no filter.
Yeah, where is he?
Where is he? Why is he not here? Like, is that his room? Like, am I wearing his clothes? And then, she gets upset. And I don't know. I'm not a screenwriter, but I just would have liked to have seen something a bit more sort of, a bit more subtle and a bit more prolonged.
Yeah, but I like it now you've said it, so notes. We then, the bond just, even after the reveal, the bond just keeps growing between Sean and Kate, and then we find out through a letter that Kate's mum has given birth to a son, so it's the first boy in the family, but it also says in the note that school is starting on Monday and Kate needs to come home. And Sean and Evelyn are devastated by this, and then they're trying to figure out ways, we'll keep her for a couple more days and we'll take her like the day before school starts. There's almost this frantic panic of, we need to keep Kate here. Like, we need to do whatever we can to keep her here.
Partly for their own selfish reasons, not selfish, partly for their own reasons, because
totally,
they've grown to love Kate. And,
Totally.
you know, she's replaced the son that they lost. So they want to keep her for themselves, but also because they know that Kate, if she goes back to her parents, is going to go back into her shell, is going to go back to the person that she was when she first arrived at their farm.
Yeah.
And they don't want that for her. They want her to continue to, you know, flourish and grow and become the person that she can be.
Yeah.
Then as sort of Sean and Evelyn are trying to figure out what to do, they realize Kate's not around and they begin freaking out and they're running around the farm looking for Kate. And they find her in a field and she is drenched, absolutely soaked, and she's fallen into the water pit, which then just evokes an absolutely devastating emotion from Evelyn. Just like, I've done this before. I've seen this image, you know, almost like I wanted to see this image before, like if my son had survived, you know, this is what it would look like. And the love that is shown in that scene to Kate, despite her doing the one thing she wasn't supposed to do, her normal family, her actual family, again, would have berated the shit out of her. But the love that is shown by Evelyn and Sean is it's the final nail in the coffin of like, please don't send Kate back. Like, please don't. But they do. They have to take.
Well, she gets a cold from that.
She does. That's it. Yeah.
And that's why they want to keep her.
Yeah, they don't want to send her back with a cold.
That's right. Yeah. But they have to take her back. They take her back to the house and they walk in and the mum is playing with all the other children, and then as soon as Kate walks in, the demeanor changes straight away. Like the genuine dislike. I don't want to say hate because you don't ever see open abuse and stuff, but the severe dislike.
Well, there's no love there.
No love. Yeah, it's the lack of love that is immediately seen. And she goes, "Well, you've grown." Like, yeah, it's been a whole summer. It's been 3 months. Of course, your 9-year-old daughter has grown. Anyway, this is a fictional film, and I'm like, I hate this goddamn family so
go
much.
over there, and I'm gonna
So goddamn
Calling
much.
up child protection, so it's like I have a crime to report. It was 40 years ago in a film in rural Ireland.
But it's fucking infuriating
Yeah.
how hospitable she is then to Sean and Evelyn.
And it's just like, why?
Cups of tea, biscuits.
Why do you take her back? Like, just,
Oh, I know. It's and this is a testament to how good the movie is and how much it's drawn me in. But the hospitality she shows, Sean and Evelyn, is disgusting. It's very much and it's disgusting because she's so nice to them because they're rich. You know what I mean? Like it's the things like, oh, you know, I'll be nice. Like, thank you for looking after my daughter. But I mean, like, just stand over there, Kate, while I, you know, talk to the adults and stuff like that. The dad then walks in and he's like, oh, the prodigal child has returned. I'm like, you demeaning piece of shit.
And again, it's that
So
same thing
condescending.
from the first sort of 10 minutes of when he walks in and, you know, the room just completely changes.
Oh, man.
Because not only is the mother sort of afraid of him and not only are the children afraid of him, but you can tell that Sean and Evelyn, there is that almost fear and that complete just disgust at who he is as a person. But, you know, they're too nice to say anything, but you can tell that they really do not like him and for good reason.
She sneezes. Kate sneezes. And the mom's like, oh, have you got a cold? And because obviously, you know, for a poor family like that, you don't have the medicine or you don't even have the clothes and the warmth and the comfort to mend. So, I mean, like, you know, people can die from that in that regard. So she's freaking out that
gets
she
in trouble for
She gets in
sneezing.
trouble for sneezing.
Yes.
This goddamn family.
He plays a great asshole, that guy.
The father. Oh, he is so good.
Like,
and
he's really
he's
good in that.
Michael Patrick, who plays Da. But he's the name is familiar, but he's like Becoming Jane. He's in heaps of. Oh, he was in Warcraft. There we go. Sorry, completely different. I was thinking about Warcraft the other day for different reasons. And Evelyn and Sean have to go. They kind of like go like, this is the time we got to rip the Band-Aid. Like we have to leave Kate here, and despite the love we have for her, despite the neglect that she has in this family, we have to leave her. And the impact of this finale hit me like a ton of bricks. I genuinely shed a tear
I think we
at
should
the end of this movie.
not say what happens.
Oh, I know.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
But emotionally, like, I was bawling.
I was, yeah.
Here's what we
so
can do
many
through the
emotions.
miracles of technology. We can talk about it, and then we can put in the description what time you can skip
Yes,
till
that's true.
if you don't want to hear
Or
that.
we- very true,
We
'cause
could
I do
also
want to talk
say, or we could also say now, if you don't want to listen
If you
to
don't-
the ending,
If you don't want to listen to anything that we've spoiled in this episode, go back to the
Stop
start
now.
and then
But if you don't want to have like the last 30 seconds spoiled for you,
it's,
right.
it's the
now's
last
the
30
time
seconds.
to pause it.
Yeah.
We'll tell you where you can come back.
In a defiant moment for Kate, she runs outside of the house as Evelyn and Sean is driving away. And again, the slow motion running shot. Oh,
which is just
my
so
God.
good from the running to the post box.
Yes.
Like it's just such a good connection.
And we get shots of Kate's time at the farm and the bonding and the growth she's had with Sean and Evelyn. Sean is about to close the gate of the farm and she's running and running and running and catches up and Sean turns around and they hug and they embrace and he picks her up and he's holding her so tightly and she says, "Daddy." And I fucking, even now, I'm like, I lost it. It was so beautiful.
So you've got her actual dad sort of chasing her up the
Chasing
driveway.
her up the driveway
So
too.
she's looking over Sean's shoulder back towards the
Seeing
house.
him.
And she sees him and she says, "Daddy." So you assume that she's telling Sean that, her dad's coming.
Yeah.
And then she sort of looks down, nestles into Sean's shoulder and then says it again.
again.
So it's sort of like, "There's my dad." And then she hugs him and goes, "But this is my dad." Like,
It was so beautiful. Cut to black, The Quiet Girl. Oh my God. I loved this movie. I love this movie. It's as equally as heartbreaking as it is beautiful. Like as delightful and joyous as it is.
think
It is.
For me, it's really rare to have that. Like
Yes.
you either have something that's completely heartbreaking and you don't really get much hope at the end,
No, yeah.
or something's too hopeful, too,
You
Yeah.
kind of write it off
But
a little
this-
bit, yeah.
it balances it well.
It
Yeah.
balances it extremely well, and I think just the way it works as well. That as you said before, the start is gloomy, depressing, and then you get that shift.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the film is quite joyous and
Yeah. Despite the reveal of the dead son
Yeah,
and despite Kate falling into the water pit,
Yeah.
there's always hope.
Yeah.
in
So
that
even
bit, yeah.
though as it ended, I was going for the tissues and I'm like, oh my God, there was an over.
Did you watch this with your
Yeah,
partner as well?
yeah.
Was
Oh, we
she?
were both.
Yeah. I need to watch this with Rihanna because I feel like she would.
Yeah.
Paul, did you
But
watch it
I-
with Christina?
No, so I watched it on my own, but I don't know if I didn't watch it in the right headspace or if I just couldn't connect with the story as much.
Yeah.
And I'm notorious for getting emotional in films. I will cry at anything.
Oh wow.
But
This one just didn't.
it didn't quite click for me.
Yeah.
To go against the grain again a bit, I liked it. I thought it was really nice and sweet and there's a lot of good moments. But overall, as the film, I just it finished and I went, "Oh, that's nice."
Right.
Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just didn't quite hit me. And I think as well, and this is the problem with movie critics who would want to be one of those, right? When you see something with such good reviews and like so much praise for it from
God, yeah.
everyone, your expectations immediately go up. You can't help it.
totally.
And
No,
it's
absolutely.
impossible to avoid.
And you get excited to watch it. That's the
Yeah.
thing, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And when, the words that everyone keeps using are, heartbreaking and emotional and
yeah.
gut-wrenching, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't quite hit me. Like I was like, oh, that's sad. Like, I feel emotional, but it wasn't like that real gut punch.
The push wasn't there.
Yeah, and I don't know if, for me, the film necessarily earned the ending that it did.
Okay.
I feel like it felt a bit manipulative in it's like, okay, how can we end this in the most emotional way possible? Let's do that. And I don't know if it really earned that right. I don't know what it could have done differently to have earned that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But for
'Cause I
me, it
think
just
it-
felt a bit like, okay, now we're going to try and get you to switch on the waterworks a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it completely earned it.
It won me over. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
from-
why I feel like it was maybe me not in the right headspace,
Yeah.
something like that. Because for
Would
these sorts,
would you watch it again? Is there something you would think you would watch again?
yeah, I didn't dislike it at all.
No,
like I
totally,
still
yeah.
really enjoyed it.
On a technical level too, it's incredibly
Yeah.
well made. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And I hate using this as a criticism because it's such a reductive and hollow criticism of a film, but it was a little bit dull.
Right.
Like there's a lot of repetitive scenes, especially of them just doing stuff at the farm. And I understand the purpose of it. It's to show like that routine and that trust and that openness being built up. Whereas like, okay, I've seen this now. Like let's
I know what you
do
mean.
something else. So for me,
I think as well because movies have now been able to do that to show those, but still be exciting and still be. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. It's a really sweet film. It's a really nice film. The performances are excellent, and as we've said, on a technical level,
really,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But for me, there probably just wasn't quite enough substance and enough for me to latch onto emotionally. But I would still absolutely recommend it.
Yeah.
I would still probably watch it again. Just, didn't quite hit me, I think, as much as you two.
What's your star rating for it?
3.5.
3.5?
I gave it 4.5.
Yeah.
It really affected me, blew me away. It's possible on a rewatch. I could give it 5.
Yeah, okay.
I just, especially talking today, I think if I rewatch this in 6 months or a year's time, it could hit a 5-star. I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like I just, that minor scene, but it didn't deflect at all for me. Yeah.
I gave it a 4 when we logged it, which you can find our letterboxd accounts in the description below. 4 stars, but again, I'm like you. Now I've spoken it. I had more time to think about it. The 4 was my immediate reaction. Like I posted it straight away. But writing the notes, preparing for today's episode, and now talking about it, I think I could push it to 4.5 for me. And it's one of those movies where I'm notorious, and I don't know if this is bad for me in a relationship, but I'm notorious for making or wanting to make my partner watch films that make us both cry. I'm like, you're gonna be in tears. Like you're gonna.
I'm gonna make you.
I'm gonna make you cry. This would be a movie I'd be like, you need to sit down and watch this, and you need to phone away. You need to pay attention to because every line of dialogue or every little nuanced moment makes that finale for me.
Put the phone away.
Totally. That should just be a general rule, by the way, for all movies.
I also, I think this is an important film in its language.
Yes.
I watched a little bit, few interviews with the director, and this language, the Irish language, is actually it's now on the endangered language list on UNESCO.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Like less than 2% of people in Ireland speak it day to day. So it's a really, I think he said that you could pretty much theatrically count on one hand films that have been made in Irish.
Because, and as Kieran was saying last episode, I don't know if you said on the episode or we were just speaking about it afterwards, to be eligible for the international cinema, it has to be 51% in the foreign language. And there is English language speaking in this film, but it is predominantly in Irish.
So I think it's only the dad that speaks English.
It's the scene in the car when he picks up the woman is in English. And
because the director said that when he grew up, his dad only spoke Irish to him.
Right.
But his mum used to speak English to him. So he kind of grew up in a similar.
I'm intrigued to see if this director has anything else coming out. Because obviously, this was a 2022 film.
They were casting this when COVID happened.
Right. And it makes sense. It's one of those movies you could film in COVID. It's a small cast.
Yeah, but they really struggled to find her.
Oh, man.
Because they needed a little girl that could speak Irish.
Wow, true, yeah. Because they're teaching it in the school as well.
Yes.
In the school scene, they're teaching Irish.
I mean, she is phenomenal.
She's
for a first-time actress, for a child actress. I'm one of those people. It's children are usually the worst part of most films.
Oh, God,
It's usually like a great film, and then it's kind of dragged down by the child performance. But she is great, and it's amazing how much a good child performance can make a movie.
And with little dialogue. Like
she does a lot with facial expressions.
It's amazing.
And the body language. So she's fantastic. And the actors who play Sean and Evelyn, they're great as well. And like I said, their relationship is the chemistry is great.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, that was The Quiet Girl. Loved it. Great film. So if you do want to watch it, it's available on DVD in Australia. It's also on SBS On Demand and on Mubi.
It is on
in certain regions.
Oh yes,
in certain regions.
Yes.
In terms of how you guys found it as an Irish film and as a foreign film,
yes.
Personally, I found it quite easy compared to some of the other films we've watched.
Culturally,
I think because obviously it's sort of that very kind of like Anglo-centric.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And growing up in the UK and Australia, which is very similar to the UK in a lot of ways, it didn't feel as culturally different.
No.
So I think if you haven't watched a foreign language film before, it's probably a really good one to start with, especially, I think of the 4 films we've done,
yes,
this is probably the one I'd say, is the easiest to start.
Most accessible and most universal.
Yeah.
I guess you could.
Yeah, even though Irish as a language is quite.
What did you
quite
think it
interesting.
sounded like? Did you get any?
I don't know, because I mean, I sort of grew up around, not Irish so much, but like I've heard Welsh growing up in the UK.
I always say I thought Welsh because my partner Rhiannon and her family's Welsh, and when we went to Wales, they still speak a hybrid of English and Welsh.
Yeah.
I was getting some like sort of Polish sort of.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Vibes and
It's a I don't want to say strange language. I don't want to offend anybody. But
No,
it's a language that's very different to comprehend for our English speaking brains.
The way the mouth and the tongue moves with like Irish, Welsh, even like Polish and stuff is quite interesting.
Yeah.
You have to have like a proper,
Yeah.
the ability to make the sound
Yeah.
is quite incredible. So
yeah, but I think it's probably the most accessible in terms of narrative.
yes, totally.
And in terms of the language that they speak. And there's not a lot happening on screen compared to some of the other films. Like, it is very dialogue
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's a lot easier to get into that, because I find that, even as someone who watches probably more foreign films than the average person,
Yep.
the more that's happening on screen, the more action there is, the
You're
more
doing
you're
harder,
seeing visually.
Yeah.
The less time you're spending reading the subtitles, and your
Yes.
kind of eyes are just doing that up and down
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
it's like a vertical tennis match. But
Yeah.
I think this is probably a good one to
I
start with.
I also think, I mean, like we said before, put your phone away.
Yeah, totally.
If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
give yourself to this,
Oh,
I think-
rewards.
but
Rewards
yeah,
you.
big rewards, and I think you'll then want to sort out more foreign film. Like, this could be,
agreed.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for watching. Now, obviously, we want a little. Or listening, yes, actually, YouTube, Spotify. We don't want to.
don't
If you are
discriminate.
consuming this content, we love you. Spotify,
You're watching it
Apple,
on your Game Boy Advance or your
in that full 240p.
Nokia.
So remember to subscribe to all the channels on your preferred podcasting platform, consuming platform of choice. Great use of words, Nick. Now, the next episode, Kieran, it is your pick. What are we doing for the next episode of That 1 Inch Barrier?
This is the first, we don't know.
Yeah,
This is a
so
surprise.
this is the first one. We've not talked about it beforehand.
No.
Yeah, actually, no, good point. Yeah, so I thought you meant, I was like, he hasn't picked it.
No,
I'm like,
it's like,
yeah, this
it's
is for
like
us
the
too.
Easter bunny's
Okay,
come.
cool.
I'm
Here we
like-
go.
We need to leave these little surprises in.
I kind of like it, actually.
Yeah.
So I want to go to somewhere that we haven't been before.
Yes.
I want to go somewhere a little bit different, somewhere that people don't really think about when it comes to foreign films. There's a director who I've wanted to watch films from for a very, very long time, probably a decade or so. He's been on my watch list. So we're going to French Canada. We're going to talk about Xavier Dolan. Pretty young for a director, especially with as many films as he has under his belt.
Yeah, he punches out some films. Yeah.
So we're going to do probably his most popular and acclaimed film. We're going to do Mommy.
Very nice. Haven't seen it, so
I can't believe you haven't seen it.
I don't. And then so the time I've known Josh, the one thing he's always tried to get me to do is watch Xavier Dolan films, and I haven't. It's not that I haven't wanted to
I
watch
think
them.
I started trying to get you to as well.
I think that's probably why
He's-
I picked Xavier
he's
Dolan. It's
bringing
just
us
like the
into the-
subliminal.
I'm so glad.
The cult of Xavier Dolan.
But it's one I'm really
yeah.
excited for.
I'm
I've
excited
heard
to
a
watch
lot
this.
about it. Like I
Yeah.
said, he's been a director who's been on my watch list for years and years and years. He's got a lot of really good films, a lot of indie stuff that's done well at festivals and stuff like that. So no other reason for picking Mummy other than it is his sort of most popular and acclaimed film.
Totally,
But
yeah.
I figure it's a great place to start
Yeah,
with.
that's
It's also
exciting.
one of, I think he's got a few films that are like nearly 3 hours long. So I was
Yes.
like, let's go for something a little bit shorter.
A bit more
good idea.
digestible. Xavier Dolan too. I'm sure you both know this as well. And for those who may not, who are more into the mainstream horror side of things, Xavier Dolan was in It Chapter 2.
Yes, he is.
He
I
is
saw- yeah.
he is one of the gay couple who gets
Yeah.
killed by Pennywise at the beginning of the film. So
Yeah, he pops up here and there.
he
He's
does
done a
follow
bit
him.
of
Yeah.
acting, and I mean, he's
Yeah.
acted
Yeah.
in his own films as well.
Yes.
He's in the majority of them.
Yeah.
And I think they're all very self-reflective.
Okay.
He's a very personal filmmaker
yeah,
from what
he
I've
is.
seen, but really excited to talk
Yes,
about that
It's
one.
awesome.
Well, be on the lookout for that, obviously. Thank you all for listening to this episode. Keep a lookout for the first Monday of every month. I probably should start saying that at the end of the
Yeah,
episode.
true.
The first Monday of every month is when we drop episodes. Thank you all for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode of That 1 Inch Barrier. All our socials are in the description. See you later.
Thank you.